This phrase I love called, when you're feeling furious, get curious. It's my camp versus your camp. It's my side versus your side. I'm right and you're wrong. Regardless of how you feel about his politics or his positions, I think one thing that was admirable about Charlie Kirk was that he engaged in those debates, right? He invited that dissent and invited that disagreement. He was willing to sort of step into the arena and to grapple with it. Even when you disagree with each other, feeling a connection to each other, right? Feeling like, I have heard you, I've listened closely, you have heard me, you've listened closely to me in return. We understand what the other person is trying to get across. And that instinct to connect with people is so deeply hardwired into our brains. It is Homo sapiens' superpowers, our ability to communicate and connect. It is what has made us the dominant species. And it's so hardwired into our brain that all you need is like a glimmer of it to entice and encourage the other person to connect with you.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
Charles, I really wanted to bring you on because, look, as we know, you've been on the podcast many times. You wrote a book called Super Communicators about how to communicate better in a world which is basically being torn apart by lack of communication. And right now, because of all these events, I'm thinking in particular, like, let's not, try to overanalyze this. Particularly the Charlie Kirk assassination has sent an already, divided world into an even more divided world. And what is going on from your perspective?
Well, I think that it was a tinderbox to begin with, right? And you had someone who was very popular among conservatives and very unpopular among liberals. His death is obviously an enormous tragedy. There's no justification ever for violence, for political violence, for assassination. It should be condemned regardless of where it originates from or who its target is. But I think into that tinderbox was thrown this very tragic killing. And I think that whenever we feel threatened, we tend to revert to our most comfortable place, which over the last 10 or 15 years has become polarization, right? It's my camp versus your camp. It's my side versus your side. I'm right and you're wrong. And so we're seeing a lot of that. But I think the other thing that's happening right now is that we're seeing two very different conversations happening. So among conservatives who love Charlie Kirk and who knew him, this is really an emotional conversation, right? This is a conversation about this tragedy, about his wife and his children and losing this bright star. Among people who did not like Charlie Kirk on the other side, this seems more like a practical conversation. They're saying, look, this is the consequence of policies that make guns easy to own. This is the consequence of language that incites us. And so you see these two kind of clashing conversations. Last time we talked about the fact that there's what research in neuroscience tells us is that there's three basic kinds of conversations: the emotional, the practical, and the social. And what we're seeing right now is some people on the right having an emotional conversation and people on the left having a practical conversation. And then wading into this are these kind of chaos entrepreneurs who really like just basically, trolling each other. And they're trying to make it a social conversation. And so because people aren't having the same kind of conversation at the same moment, it's very, very hard for us to hear each other. It's very, very hard for us to feel connected to each other.
Yeah, have you seen it's almost gory to ask, but have you seen the video of him being shot?
Not.
It is really disturbing. I wasn't expecting it. I looked for it on purpose, because I didn't believe that, it's probably like how, sometimes people are shot at from a distance, they survive, the bullet grazed, kind of like what happened with Trump. But I've never seen it's like a death right in front of you. It's really horrible. And I know, probably 100 million people have seen that video. And I think it's almost traumatic then for people to discuss it. Like, just seeing it, you start to cry because it looks so awful. And then when people, let's say you're on the right and you see people literally celebrating it on the left, like you can't sugarcoat that. People were dancing around and saying yay, even like respected people. Like, there's some discussion how the the president of the Oxford Union Debate Society was celebrating it. I mean, there was no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah,
Like,
and I should say I didn't see any of that. I saw a great deal of debate, and I didn't look closely, so it might have been out there, and I just didn't see it. But I didn't see people celebrating his death as much as saying, I don't think he's as much of a clear-cut figure of sympathy as others are portraying. But if you tell me that there were people celebrating it, I'll believe you. I just didn't see that.
by the way, he's not. There's lots of ways anybody would disagree with him. I mean, he had opinions that were where he had thought them out, but they're extreme. Like, you're more likely to have his opinion if you're a religious, conservative, very religious, very conservative citizen, which, tens of millions of people are, but tens of millions aren't.
Regardless of how you feel about his politics or his positions, I think one thing that was admirable about Charlie Kirk was that he engaged in those debates, right? He invited that dissent and invited that disagreement. He was willing to sort of step into the arena and to grapple with it. And
it's almost
I never saw him.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm not being a good communicator, but it just occurred to me. It's almost as if he's read your book, Super Communicators, because he would do a lot of those techniques of mirroring and looping and so on. He would try to keep the temperature levels really low when very angry people will get up at the mic and debate him.
I think that's right. I think that he always had a policy of engagement, which I think is refreshing. Now I will say he is someone who sought out debates rather than agreement, right? As far as I know, and again, I'm not really a student of Charlie Kirk. I've been studying his statements, but my impression is that he's someone who sought out debate, and the goal oftentimes wasn't necessarily to come to a reconciliation, as much as to air each side's thoughts in contrast to each other. And that is something that super communicators do really, really well. Another thing that's important to super communicators, which I don't know if it was important to him, it might have been, it might not have been, is that even when you disagree with each other, feeling a connection to each other, right? Feeling like, I have heard you, I've listened closely, you have heard me, you've listened closely to me in return. We understand what the other person is trying to get across, and we can actually say it back to them even better than they could say it to us in the first place. That's an important aspect because it gets to what the heart of communication is. We think of communication as an information transmission device, but the sharing of information is actually just a byproduct of communication, of how our brains have evolved to communicate. The goal of communication is to make us feel connected to each other, because as pro-social beings and as a pro-social species, feeling connected to each other has helped us survive. And so it's great when we can have an intellectual conversation or even an emotional conversation. I can learn from you, you can learn from me. But what's really the mark of a success is, do we feel at least a little bit more connected to each other? And I think that Charlie Kirk did that, even with people whom he disagreed with and who disagreed with him. That because he was willing to engage with them, they felt a sense of kinship, even if they disagreed on issues.
And so, do you think in order for this to work, both sides have to be willing to play the role of, hey, I want to connect?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes. I think if somebody genuinely doesn't want to connect, right? If they're like, look, I just want to yell at you and I want you to stand there and mutely take it, then you're probably not going to have a lot of luck connecting with them, right? But I do think that we all have this instinct to connect. I mean, the truth of the matter is that, like, when you're in an argument with someone and you just take a moment and you say, look, I totally hear what you're saying, but I want to let you know how this issue makes me feel, because it makes me feel scared, or it makes me feel worried, or it makes me feel unhappy. That when we do that, oftentimes the other person does connect with us a little bit. And they say, look, I don't want you to feel scared. I mean, I disagree with this. I think that, everyone should have a gun, and you think that guns should be illegal. We disagree on how to preserve our safety, but we both want safety. We want safety for our kids. That instinct to connect with people is so deeply hardwired into our brains. It is the reason why it is Homo sapiens' superpowers, our ability to communicate and connect. It is what has made us the dominant species. And it's so hardwired into our brain that all you need is like a glimmer of it to entice and encourage the other person to connect with you. And that doesn't mean that you're best friends. It doesn't mean that you agree with each other. It doesn't mean you're going to cry on each other's shoulders. But it does mean that you feel some kinship as two humans trying to make their way through the world.
So let me ask you to, just as like for me to see and understand, let me ask you to steelman both sides, and I'll pick a specific situation. So in Congress, the day after or the day of, I don't even know, the Charlie Kirk's assassination, one congressman, I think she was Republican, asked for a moment of silence or a moment of prayer, and I guess the Democrats didn't want that, and the Republicans did want that. So there was actually like a shouting match. Clearly, the congressmen have not read your books.
Yeah, I think what happened there is that someone called for a moment of prayer. And then again, I might be wrong on this, but if I remember correctly, a Republican asked for a prayer to be read out loud or something to be read out loud in addition to the moment of silence. And then there was an objection because that hadn't been done for previous victims of gun violence who had received a moment of silence on the floor. Regardless,
Yeah.
it's a dumb debate, right?
Right.
It's clearly people who don't actually care about this issue as much as they care about sort of the theater of making a point. And I think you're right. Hey, look, in Congress, there aren't a lot of people who want to connect with each other. The truth of the matter is, this is hardwired into our brain. But the U.S. Congress has managed to find a lot of the people who have been able to undo that hardwiring in a very visceral way.
And that's scary because I feel like congressmen, okay, there's been periods of history where it's been more heated than other periods of history. But I feel like in general, throughout my life, Congress in general got along with each other. Democrats and Republicans got along with each other, and now they don't at all.
Yeah, Democrats and Republicans, and I think there was a lot of reaching across the aisle. I think there's a lot of reasons for this. Also, I don't think it's universal, right? I think that I talk to a lot of people in Congress, and a lot of them say, I do want to work with my colleagues. I do work with my colleagues. We get stuff done together. But then we have these performers who have really gotten these big stages. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a congresswoman from Colorado who I don't think anyone would know about, except that she has these kind of performances. And there's folks on the left who did it as well. I think AOC is someone who has a performative partisanship. It's certainly not limited to one party. What's happening now is that you get more rewarded for it than you used to in the past. It used to be that people really wanted Congress to do their job. They really wanted them to get together and they really wanted them to pass good laws. Now, because of gerrymandering, because of, that the primary is oftentimes more important than the general election, because of the rise of a media sphere that rewards extreme behavior rather than good policymaking, because of the rise of social media, we see that now it's much more rewarding to have an enemy than to make a friend.
It's really good.
And most of us avoid that, but some people don't.
And so if you were to steelman both sides, so you're a congressman talking to a congressman, you're AOC talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene, or Marjorie Taylor Greene talking to AOC, how would you discuss this? Because, and I bring this up, not that this is such a weird example, but this is the example. It's neighbor versus neighbor right now on the streets.
Right.
Talking about
I don't think it's quite that bad on the streets, to be honest with you.
I don't know.
I have family who live in conservative states, and I don't see them going to war with the liberals living nearby. But I would say, so the first thing I would say is that AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene should probably not have that conversation. I don't think either of them really want to connect with the other side. Let's say we have Congressman X and Congressman Y, and they come from different states, and one's a Republican and one's a Democrat. How do we sit down together? I mean, this happens all the time. Like literally, this is what Congress does. And if you talk to Congress people about how they actually spend their time, what they'll say is, I spend most of my time in Congress trying to understand what's important to the people whom I have to work with, because I need them to support me. And they want to know what's important to me because I have to support them, right? There is a system that is built into our politics that you have to work with people who disagree with you. And that doesn't mean reaching across the aisle. Oftentimes you have Democrats who don't agree with other Democrats and Republicans who don't agree with other Republicans. And that disagreement is at the heart of why we thought the American experiment was worth pursuing. That if you brought people together from different perspectives and they came to a consensus, that consensus would probably be better than any of the answers they came up with on their own and apart from each other. And so I think that the first thing that would happen is that people should ask each other what matters to you, right? In the book, in Super Communicators, we talk about deep questions. That many of the questions we ask are what are known as surface questions. but that there's much more powerful questions that are known within psychology as deep questions. And a deep question is something that asks about our values or our beliefs or our experiences. And, that can sound intimidating, but an example of that is if you meet someone who's a doctor, instead of saying, oh, what hospital do you work at? Which would be a surface question. Asking, oh, why'd you decide to go to medical school? Which is a deep question, right? It's an invitation to the other person to tell us who they really are, to tell us about their values and their beliefs, their experiences. And so I would say when Congress people sit down with each other, when it's not firebrands who are just trying to get attention, oftentimes they start the conversation by saying, getting elected to Congress is really hard. It's a major sacrifice. What was it about this that was important to you? What is it that you want to get done while you're here? That's a deep question. It asks someone why they're here, who they are, what they care about. And if I know what you care about and I can share with you what I care about, we might care about different things, but there's probably some aspects of those things that we have in common. And moreover, if I know what you care about and you know what I care about, then we can figure out how to come to a compromise and give you what you need and give me what I need.
Yeah, so that's good. So even if they don't really know the answer to that question, they're going to come up with an answer, and that's something to work with.
I mean, so here's an example. Let me ask you a deep question. Why do you do this podcast?
So things have gotten really busy for me lately, and I've asked for it. Like, I'm doing all things I love doing and wanting to do, but I'm very busy and I have to be focused on every single thing. And some of these things that I do during the day, like basically I'm helping run 3 different businesses, plus I'm doing 3 podcasts a week, and I have to read and prepare for each podcast. I'm writing a book. Those are just like my professional career things. And then I'm doing all sorts of other things. And I often have to switch from meeting to meeting to meeting, and my brain has to stay focused. And I don't want to take any stimulants that's going to get me like overhyped or overstimulated and not. I really want to function optimally. I don't think this is going to last forever. Well, I hope it doesn't last more than a month like this. But basically, I had to figure out what to do. And I really can't highly recommend enough Huel, Huel, and their Black Edition powder. It's like a complete meal. So you feel full, focused, and I feel more ready for the day. Like, it actually works. So at less than $3 per meal, it's packed with 40 grams of plant-based protein and 27 essential vitamins and minerals, no added sugar, gluten-free, tastes great with flavors like salted caramel and chocolate. Plus, it keeps me full for hours. That's key. I don't want to be like hungry during all these meetings. And it's perfect for breakfast, lunch, or post-workout. And just when you thought Huel had everything covered, they just dropped a first of its kind super greens drink in a can. And it's called the Huel Daily Greens Ready to Drink. So you forget powders, forget those pills. This is your daily greens. No mixing, no mess, quick and convenient without compromising nutrients. Don't go for those compromising nutrients. It's sparkling and comes in flavors like blueberry, apple, peach, 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods, only 25 calories, 4 grams of fiber, 1 gram of sugar, made by dietitians. So try Huel with 15% off for new customers today using my code Altucher at Huel.com/Altucher. Fuel your best performance with Huel today. Being an entrepreneur is a 24/7 job. And when you're hiring, you need a partner that works as hard as you do. That hiring partner is LinkedIn Jobs. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, get qualified candidates that you can manage all in one place. For one thing, you could post a job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people. You get qualified candidates. At the end of the day, the most important thing to your business is the quality of the candidates. And with LinkedIn, of course, you can feel confident that you're getting the best. Based on LinkedIn data, 72% of small and medium businesses say using LinkedIn helps them find high quality candidates. Find out why more than 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring today. Find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Altucher. That's linkedin.com/Altucher to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. there's a cynical answer and a good answer. Or
Okay.
I do this podcast because it does give me an opportunity. When I read a book like Super Communicators, for instance, I don't understand everything I read. Because I have a podcast, I could actually call the author, you, and ask really dumb questions that I don't understand with the excuse that, oh, I'm trying to make it easy for my listeners to understand. But actually, I'm really trying to learn how to
Right.
communicate better with my wife or a business partner or whatever.
Which, by the way, is a big part of why I became a journalist, is exactly for that reason. So I could call people up and ask them questions that I was just interested in.
Yeah, like a podcast is not quite journalism, but it's a form of kind of that
Yeah.
outreach to the public and being the intermediary between a private person like yourself who's put something out and the public audience. I'm the intermediary.
Yeah.
Same with journalism.
So wait, is that the cynical answer, or is that
No, that's the good. The cynical answer is there's a performance aspect to almost everything I do, whether it's writing or podcasting, building, social media, or even building a business.
I don't think that's cynical. I don't think it's cynical at all. But let me tell you what you just did. You told me so much about who you are, right? Here's what I know about you. I know that you are someone who likes to learn. I know that you're someone who has enough intellectual humility to know that even if you're exposed to information, sometimes you need something more to help it really become knowledge. I know that you're someone who doesn't mind being on the stage, being out there, being a public intellectual. Now, if I was trying to convince you, James, I want you to invest in my company, what I would probably say is I would try to appeal to those things that you care about. Let me tell you why making an investment in my company, or let me tell you why voting for me. Let's say I'm trying to get your vote. Why voting for me will help you achieve your goals. Because I promise you can call me anytime. I'm going to have access to all this new information that's really interesting, and I'd love to share it with you. Also, I'd love to have you join my campaign, and it's kind of a little bit of a high profile, right? Once I know what you want, I know so much more about you. I know how to talk to you. I know how to talk about the things that matter to you. And particularly if I share that about myself, if I say, the reason I'm running for Congress today is because I had a kid who was at a school while a school shooting was going. And I'm scared for them, and I want to make change that makes that better. Now you know so much about me. Like at that point, when we know this about each other, we can't help but feel closer to each other. There's actually an instinct, again, hardwired in our brain, known as social reciprocity, that makes it impossible for us not to feel a little bit closer to each other. That's the glue that's held our species together since we evolved.
You're so right. And then you look through history, there are times when society is divided. I'm right and you're wrong. Like take the 1850s, slavery. One senator beat up another senator on the Senate floor in I think it was 1859 over this issue because there's obviously they felt strongly that there was no middle ground.
Hopefully they felt strongly. I think they used their walking cane to beat the guy over the head until he was unconscious and almost dead.
Right. So basically, and I feel like that's what's happening now, that basically if you don't agree with me, you might as well be dead.
So here's the thing I would say, because I think there is one thing in what you just said, which is not completely accurate, which is that you said there are times when we all agreed with each other. But if you think about the times that we're proudest of as a country, it is not when we all agreed with each other. It is when we disagreed with each other, but we did so in peaceful and productive ways, right? Let's take the Constitutional Convention, the writing of the Constitution. Basically what you had is a group of people who literally hated each other, who for months at a time would go into a room and just argue nonstop. And they would write these gerrymads about how bad the other people were. But they knew how to disagree with each other in a way where eventually they could write a constitution together. They founded this nation. And the same thing is true of the civil rights movement. It's not that people agreed with each other, even within the movement itself. It's that they knew how to disagree politely. World War II, there was huge, huge debates over whether we should enter World War II, what the correct strategy was once we were in World War II. And it wasn't that everyone agreed with each other. It was that we disagreed with each other, but we knew how to disagree in ways that were helpful. That's what we're missing today. It's not that we're all going to be on the same page or reading from the same hymnal. It's that we need to learn how to disagree with each other better.
And what if there's no incentive? Like you said, a lot of times people are disagreeing with each other now, and I'll use Congress as an example, but it could be anybody, because there's political reward or there's reward within your subculture for just disagreeing.
Yeah. So I think the key there is that we stop giving out those rewards, right? If you have a kid and every time the kid picks a fight with you, you give them a piece of candy, they're going to learn to pick fights with you, right? They're not going to learn to go to bed on time. They're not going to learn to do their homework. They're going to learn, if I just fight with dad and I tell him he's wrong, eventually he's going to feel bad and he's going to give me some candy. That's exactly what's happening right now. And as parents, what we do is we stop rewarding our kids for bad behavior. And as Americans, that's what we have to start doing right now. And it's hard. It's hard because it means that we don't sort of get that gleeful dopamine hit when our side scores a point against the other side and we feel good about it. We have to tamp down on that instinct. And this is where we have to be better citizens and we have to be more mature adults. Because if we stop rewarding bad behavior, it will go away.
This is what I've been waiting for. Look, I've done 1,500 podcasts, a ton of podcasts about health and particularly anti-aging. I've had on every anti-aging expert on the planet. And finally, gummy bears to help me with anti-aging. These are the first ever longevity gummies powered by MitoPure, a delicious, easy way to put more energy into your day and to treat yourself. The only clinically proven urolithin A gummy for strength and healthy aging from the inside out. And I've taken it as supplements, but I'm not really a supplement taker kind of person. I'd much rather just like take a bunch of gummy bears and like eat it like candy. You can't really tell how much it's working, and sometimes you don't know for sure. Is it just, are you thinking this? But it does improve energy. Tests showed it increases muscle strength by up to 12% after 16 weeks. These gummy bears deliver 6x more urolithin A than a glass of pomegranate juice, which, by the way, I was taking a ton of pomegranates as well. So this is the #1 doctor-recommended urolithin A supplement. It's vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, Clean Label Project certified, NSF content certified, and free of major allergens and artificial ingredients. MitoPure is the only clinically proven form of urolithin A. So if you want to stay strong and energized now and as you age, then you have to try MitoPure gummies. My friends at Timeline are offering 20% off just for my listeners. So head to timeline.com/Altucher to get started. That's timeline.com/Altucher. Your cells will thank you. Let's take an issue like gun control, which is coming up in part because of the Charlie Kirk stuff. I honestly, and people never believe me on this, like Mehdi Hassan came on my podcast and I said, really on most issues, I either don't know what to think or I'm neutral. And he said, I don't believe you. Nobody's neutral. But I honestly feel like I am. Take gun control. I honestly don't really know what to think. I don't have enough information. Everybody on either side I'm the kind of person, the last person I speak to, I'll agree with because they had the latest statistics. Seems reasonable to me. I have no idea. But people don't believe me, and then they'll get angry because they think I'm lying about being neutral. But I also sometimes get angry when I think people are just blindly on one side as opposed to another. I'll get angry at Republicans who think we should have guns to protect ourselves just in case the government goes awry. And I get angry with Democrats who think no guns ever, and then later they want to defund the police and who knows? Everybody goes to extremes. So how do I not get angry at the people who are so blindly on one side? Because I do get angry. And then B, how do I try to have discussions where I'm learning about these issues?
Well, okay, so let me ask you this. Do you have kids?
Yeah.
Do your kids do things that you wish that they didn't do that it would be easy to get angry about?
Yes, but I've had a strategy their whole lives for this, which is to never get angry, but even to tell myself, don't get angry, get disappointed, and then tell them why I'm disappointed.
Which is great. So why don't you apply that to folks who on this gun control issue or gun rights issue?
I guess because I don't want to offend people. So let's say a good friend of mine is just blindly on one side. I'm not going to say I'm disappointed in you for only thinking this way, because I have respect in many other ways for this friend. So it feels like that's too much.
So my guess is that when it comes to your kids doing something wrong, even though you feel disappointment, which you probably do, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, is that you probably say to them, look, I think this was the wrong thing to do. Can you walk me through why you did it? Right?
I wouldn't say that, but that is a good way to have done it. Because when someone's a little kid, when someone's 4 years old, I'm just going to say, I'm disappointed you hate your sister this way. Like,
right. No, but I mean, a pretty common phrase in our household, and I think most others, is like, use your words. Tell me with your words. Don't use your fists, use your words and tell me what you're feeling, right? What we're doing is, I think you're exactly right. It is very easy for us to get angry at someone else. And if we just take it, there's this phrase I love called, when you're feeling furious, get curious. Because if in the moment that you are angry, if you just take half a second and say, look, before I tell you why you're wrong and you're an idiot, tell me more. Like, tell me more about why you believe this. I promise you what you're going to hear is something that helps put it into context for you. And that doesn't mean you're going to agree with them, right? But you're going to hear someone saying that they should never take away our guns. Our guns are the most important thing. It's the only thing that can stop tyranny. And if instead of saying, yeah, but they kill children, that if you just say, tell me why this issue seems really important to you. Tell me why it's important to you. And they're going to say something like, look, the way I got to know my dad is we went hunting together. And I want to get to know my kids. And if you take away guns from me, I'm going to lose this opportunity to really bond with my kids. That's something you understand. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to agree with this guy. You're going to say, oh, we should have all guns. Assault rifles are definitely necessary. But it does mean that there's something now you understand about where he's coming from. That what he's talking about is he's talking about a sense of closeness that weapons represent for him. And then you can share, look, I just want to tell you about my experience with guns. The reason why this is important to me is because my kid was at a school when there was a shooting and it's traumatized him. And now that other person knows it's not that you hate guns or that you hate this person. You hate the feeling of being unsafe. You hate that your children had to feel unsafe. These are things that we have in common that we can connect over, even if we disagree with each other.
That makes sense. I'm just wondering, like, what if on either side, like there's cliches. So one side could say, well, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And on the other side, you could say, hey, if our gun laws allow for even one innocent death, then that's too much. And both are cliches. Both are not really accurate. And how do you deal with when everybody kind of just falls to cliches when you're trying to get that understanding?
Well, when you ask people about their personal experiences, that's when the cliche falls away. Right? It's very easy to use a cliche when I'm talking about millions, hundreds of millions of people. But when I say to someone, tell me about your experience with guns. Like, when have you used guns? How have they touched your life? Nobody's cliched at that point because they're talking about their personal experiences. Nobody says, well, like all people, I am aware of the statistics on guns, right? That's not. So I think the key here is that if you ask a deep question, if you ask someone about their values or their beliefs or their experiences, and you don't have to do it in a really like clumsy way, you can just say, tell me why this is important to you. They're not going to say cliches. It's when we feel like we have to defend an entire side of something that we start spouting cliches.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. Like, sometimes I find myself in a position where I'm defending a side I don't really want to defend. You ever get in a situation like that? And how do you avoid that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, first of all, it's kind of fun sometimes, right? Like oftentimes what I'll say is look, I'm going to make an argument and I only believe it 30%, but I want to try it out. Let's see how it flies. And I think that, I'm very often telling people what my confidence interval is around what I'm saying. And it's never very high, right? It's never like I'm 100% confident in what I'm telling you. It's always like, I'm like 60% confident that I might be right. But that 40%, if you convince me that it's bigger than that, I'll listen to you.
I like that approach, actually, of admitting your confidence level.
Oh, absolutely. And the truth of the matter is that,
keeping the door open.
We keep the door open, but oftentimes, a conversation is not, if we all knew exactly what we believed, then most of the time we wouldn't even have to have conversations. We know what I don't have to dialogue with you. I know what I believe. I know what you believe. It's fine. Most of the time when we have conversations, it's because we don't entirely know what we believe and we're trying to figure it out. When we're talking to the other person, we're also talking to ourselves and we're as surprised by the words coming out of our mouth as anyone else. And so we shouldn't be held to being perfect when we have a conversation. And a question for you, does this make you feel better?
It does, because it shows me that there is a path that the country can take to be more united. But let me ask you, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because we've been through tough periods before and we've made it through. Now, I think what's happening right now with the polarization, with some of the threats to speech, with some of the stuff that's going on in Washington, D.C. is worrisome to me. I'm not going to downplay how concerned I am. But I think that the arc of history is long and that it does arc towards a better life. And the way that we create that better life is we take responsibility for it. And so I'm going to issue a challenge to you and to all of your listeners, if that's okay.
Sure.
Which is, I think that sometime this week, in the next 7 days, find someone you disagree with on some issue and ask them, just say, look, I want to understand more about what you believe and why it matters to you so much. Can you just tell me a little bit about like why this issue seems so important to you? And then don't argue with them. Just listen. And in fact, listen so well that you can repeat back to them. Say, look, what I think I hear you saying is this. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. And if you do that, and then you share something about yourself, you and that person will feel closer to each other. You will understand where they're coming from better.
And really, I'm just imagining this, particularly in like situations I might feel strongly about. It's going to be very hard to do, but I'm going to try this challenge. I'm going to put the relationship before the topic.
It's not just putting the relationship before the topic. It's also that, like, let's say it's some issue, let's say it's Israel and Gaza, right? Where people just seem very fanatical in their perspectives. You're not going to convince the other person that they're wrong and you're right. You're not telling them you're an idiot. Here's all the facts that you don't know. That's not going to work. If you actually want to change their mind, then you have to be willing to have a conversation with them where they might change your mind.
Yeah. Well, Charles, look, this has been an issue that's really bothered me this past week about communicating in this country. I appreciate you coming on at short notice. It's just by coincidence, your book, Super Communicators, which we last talked about a year ago, is now out in paperback this week. So I'm glad you came on. Charles Duhigg, Super Communicators, New York Times bestseller. Also, you came on for The Power of Habit, excellent book. So I really appreciate you spending the time. I know you're really busy.
No, thank you for having me.
I'm going to call you again the next time the country is divided.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I love it.
Thanks,
hopefully it'll be a long time.
I will talk to you soon.